So I've just finished the campaign for Path of Exile 2, and I now feel that I'm in a position to properly review the game and give my thoughts. In short, I think it's a really fun game. It's the combat, some of the best combat I've ever played. It's snappy, it's responsive. In terms of visuals, the game looks fantastic. And all in all, it's actually insane that this is just an early access version of the game, essentially a beta. I think the bare bones is there, and I'm pretty optimistic for the future of the game. The only caveat being, in order to really, in my opinion, enjoy the game to the fullest, you really, as a new player jumping in, need to spend some time doing a little bit of research, spending some time in-game reading the skills to really try and understand what the game is trying to tell you from a mechanically and from a build perspective. But once you kind of figure out what you're doing, that's when the game really opens up and you can really start to have fun with experimentation and engage in what the game has to truly offer. Path of Exile 2's combat is probably the strongest aspect of the game. The combat is fluid, it's responsive. You feel the weight of every attack you do. Every move your character makes feels purposeful, and I think that's because of the animation quality in it of itself. When you rise up to do a big heavy slam, you can feel the character really strain, lift up, bend, and bring the weapon down with enough effects to make it feel real. From clicking the button to seeing your character perform the move, it looks and feels great. What really helps the combat, in my opinion, is WASD. With WASD on the keyboard makes it so that you can strafe, so you can walk sideways and backwards while facing enemies on screen. It feels more controlled instead of point and click that I'm used to. I think the dodge roll edition was great. It makes you have more maneuverability when you're playing the game. And because of how the game's designed, with a lot of the bosses having big wind-up attacks or charges or anything like that, dodge rolling just feels appropriate. You just feel like you're more in control of the character. And what also makes the combat feels good in terms of with dodge roll is the fact that you can animation cancel with dodge roll. So if your attack animation for a particular move has a long wind-up, or even if it has a short wind-up, you can quickly just dodge to the left or right, cancel out of that animation, and not get hit by whatever you saw on screen. So you just feel more in control of your character. The bosses in Path of Exile 2 is probably the biggest unforeseen W that anyone could have predicted of the game. The bosses are complex, they're very highly detailed, a lot of moves. They are also have the tendency to be multi-staged as well. It's very Dark Soul-esque, where you get the boss down to maybe half-life or three-quarter life, and they might have a second stage with a completely different moveset and just changes the way the fight works. I think the best example of this is the Count from the Act 1 end boss. Spoiler alert, he turns into a wolf and he attacks you. It's insane. The choreography of the bosses themselves are very well done. They usually have big wind-up attacks or big hits that you can either block or roll out of, mainly dodge roll out of, and attack animations are well telegraphed so you can see what's coming. And the moveset makes the boss fights interesting enough so replaying them doesn't feel boring. Also, the hitboxes for the bosses as well seem to be very well done. When you think you should be dodging something or rolling out of the way, it works. When you mistime your dodge roll or mistime an ability or something along those lines and you get hit, most of the time you don't feel like you've been cheated. From a visual standpoint, you can tell that Grinding Gear Games really put a lot of effort into these bosses because they have the best looking models in the game. In particular, the Act 3 boss is probably one of the best looking bosses I've seen in a very long time. It's very well done. I really enjoy the baseline principle of how the gem system works in the game. Essentially, the skills that you used are tied to your weapon class. Each weapon has their own set of skill gems that you equip. These are all your active skills and some passive skills depending on the gem. Your class passive skill tree and gear passive also have large effects on your overall power. The caveat to these systems is while they might be simple to start, truly understanding how your character's abilities scale and interact with one another is quite difficult. This is not a game where you can just jump in, wing it, and beat all the content. I'm saying this from the perspective of not following any build guides and trying to play the game using the tools provided in-game. Currently, I'm in maps and I still have quite a lot to learn concerning how to build my character and maximize my power with the playstyle I want. There's a lot of room for player expression in this game, but I feel like as a new player, you don't have access to that sort of skill expression from the start. At least if you want to take your build into endgame, it feels like you need to know what you're doing in order to fully maximize creativity. The best way to describe difficulty in this game is that it's easy when you understand and engage with all the systems provided for you, but significantly harder when you don't. For me personally, while learning the game for the first 3 acts, I was met with many challenges and walls that I was forced to overcome. Once I addressed some of my lack of knowledge by doing some of the in-game reading, adjustments, and engaging a trade, the game became more fun to play. I will say, reading how your skills work and how it actually scales is extremely important to having a good experience. I personally made a mistake when I was playing Monk. I was simply stacking more electric damage on my war staff because I had an electric build. On closer inspection to my skill, I realized that I was converting 80% of physical damage to electric damage. And by not stacking physical damage, I was essentially not utilizing my skills correctly on my build. I think the biggest downfall of Path of Exile to early access is its inability to teach players how to play the game within the game itself. I think Path of Exile 2 relies on the Path of Exile 2 community to teach its players how to play the game and teach the players the system mechanics of the game. Currently, almost everything that I understand about the game was learned through watching videos and guides on how to get started, because the game just doesn't do a good job. Without looking at external resources, I wouldn't know the tier system in the game concerning affixes, prefixes, and suffixes. I wouldn't know what an affix, a prefix, or a suffix even means. I wouldn't know how any of the endgame mechanics actually work. I wouldn't know how to trade. I wouldn't know how to engage with trade. I wouldn't know about the currency exchange. And there are many more mechanics in the game that you will never understand by not using an external resource for help. I think Grinding Gear games need to invest some time into teaching players within the game. So these are the thoughts on the game as a new player hopping into the series. It's a pretty fun experience. It takes a little bit of work to really get into it, as when you just start, you just don't know what you're doing. But anyway, if you have any feedback for me, please leave it in the comments below. If you like the video, please give it a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. If you want to catch me live, I'm on Twitch at CableG Corner at Twitch. So thank you again for making it to the end, and I'll see you next time.